The bracelet slipped from my fingers as he collapsed to his knees. My God, it's you. In that moment, I realized the man whose daughter I had just saved was my father. A father I never knew existed. But that revelation was still hours away, and my day began like any other. Elena Parker's eyes snap open in the darkness, her heart hammering against her ribs. The same dream again. She reaches out, silencing her alarm clock before it has a chance to blare. Always before the alarm, never wasting a minute of daylight. Her modest apartment captures her essence. Sparsely furnished but impeccably clean, with nursing textbooks neatly stacked beside medical journals. Eleanor, 34, and carrying a quiet dignity in her movements, slides her feet into well-worn slippers. Her dark hair falls in natural waves around a face that holds both strength and sorrow in equal measure. She moves to her window, pulling back curtains to reveal a neighborhood just beginning to wake. Ordinary people preparing for ordinary days. Some people search their whole lives for purpose, Eleanor's voice narrates softly, as if confiding in us. I've always known mine. To heal. To help. To hold space for those in pain. She moves to a small wooden nightstand where a bracelet rests, silver, delicate, with a unique pendant. Her fingers hover over it, a daily hesitation, before she decides today, like most days, to leave it behind. Some treasures are too precious for everyday wear. In her bathroom mirror, Eleanor studies her reflection. The eyes that have seen more suffering than they should. The smile she practices before facing each day. My mother always said our hands were meant for helping, she whispers, examining her capable fingers. These hands are my inheritance. The morning sunlight strengthens as Elena prepares a simple breakfast. Oatmeal, a sliced apple, black, coffee. She eats standing, gazing at a photo of a beautiful woman with Elena's same determined eyes. The silence of her apartment wraps around her like a familiar shawl. Another day, she says to the photograph, I'll make you proud. As she gathers her belongings for work, Eleanor's movements are precise, practiced. Her nurse's ID badge catches the light as she clips it to her scrubs. Elena Parker, RN, Emergency Services. In those 4 words lies her identity, her contribution, her place in the world. She steps outside, locking her door behind her, straightening her shoulders as if preparing for battle. The weight she carries is invisible, but unmistakable. The weight of questions unanswered, of roots half-formed, of a life spent searching for reflections of herself in strangers' faces. The sliding doors of Westside Community Health Center part with a soft hiss as Elena enters. Immediately enveloped by the familiar symphony of medical efficiency, phones ringing, monitors beeping, voices speaking in the measured tones of professionals accustomed to crisis. Morning, sunshine, calls Darlene, the charge nurse whose silver-streaked hair and weathered hands speak of decades in service. Coffee's fresh, and we've got 3 in waiting already. Elena's smile is genuine as she stows her bag in her locker. The transition from solitary mourning to professional purpose energizes her in ways nothing else can. Good morning to my favorite work family, she responds, her voice warming the sterile air. This place, with its industrial lighting and antiseptic smell, has become more home than the apartment she returns to each night. Here, Elena moves. With confidence, her natural grace amplified by expertise. Remember when you first started? Darlene asks, handing Elena a steaming cup. So quiet, I thought you might be mute. Now look at you. The patients ask for you by name. Elena laughs softly. I remember being terrified. Everything seemed so urgent. And now I know which urgencies matter most. As they speak, Elena's eyes continually scan her surroundings, a professional vigilance that never quite turns off. She notices a young mother struggling to calm a feverish toddler and excuses herself from Darlene, moving seamlessly toward them. Hi there, she says, kneeling to the child's eye level. I'm Elena. That looks like a pretty tough fever you've got. Her voice transforms, becoming a gentle instrument precisely tuned to soothe childish fears. The toddler's wails subside to whimpers as Elena performs a quick assessment with hands that seem to comfort even as they evaluate. You've got Magic hands, Parker, Dr. Rivera comments as he passes, medical chart tucked under his arm. Room 3 could use some of that magic? Elderly gentleman, 4th time this month? Elena nods, understanding the subtext. Some patients come seeking healing for ailments. Medicine cannot touch loneliness, grief, the peculiar pain of feeling obsolete. As the morning unfolds, Eleanor moves from room to room, patient to patient. She draws blood with such skill that many never feel the needle. She explains complicated medical jargon in words that dissolve fear. She listens, truly listens, to concerns that others might dismiss. A memory surfaces as she works. Her childhood self, no more than 7, carefully placing bandages on her dolls, on neighborhood pets, even on her mother's weary feet after long shifts. You've got healing in your touch, her mother had said. Some people are just born with it. In a brief moment between patients, Eleanor pauses at the nurse's station, studying a chart but seeing instead the trajectory that brought her here, from a small apartment shared with a single mother working multiple jobs, to scholarships hard-won, to nights studying medical texts until her eyes burned. The path had never been easy, but it had always been clear. Elena, a voice pulls her back to the present. Multi-car accident coming in. ETA, 5 minutes. And just like that, she's moving again. Preparations automatic, mind shifting, into the focused state that makes her exceptional at what she does. In emergencies, Elena finds her truest self, calm amidst chaos, strong amidst suffering, certain amidst confusion. This is where she belongs. This is what she was meant for. If only that sense of belonging extended beyond these walls, beyond this role. If only the question that has haunted her since childhood, the face she's never known, the father who's never been named, didn't still echo in the quiet moments between the emergencies that define her professional life. Evening settles over Elena's apartment, transforming its daytime simplicity into something more melancholy. After a 12-hour shift that stretched muscles and heart alike, she moves with the deliberate slowness of someone conserving what little energy remains. The shower's steam has barely cleared when Elena, wrapped in a faded robe that once belonged to her mother, sits cross-legged on her bed. Her hair, still damp, leaves dark patches on her shoulders as she reaches beneath the bed frame. Fingers searching with practiced precision, they find what they seek. A cedar box, small enough to carry but large enough to hold fragments of a life not fully understood. Elena brings it into her lap with a reverence usually reserved for sacred things. In many ways, this box is her personal altar, storing relics of the woman who gave her life and the questions that remain unanswered. I helped deliver a baby today, Mom. Elena speaks to the empty room as she carefully lifts the lid. A little girl. The father cried when he held her. Her voice catches, the familiar ache rising. I still wonder if he ever knew about me, if he ever cared. Inside the box, carefully preserved, a worn photograph of a beautiful young woman with Elena's eyes and a wider, more carefree smile than Elena has ever managed. Letters written in flowing script on paper, now yellowing at the edges. A hospital bracelet marking Elena's birth. Newspaper clippings of honor roll announcements and nursing school graduation. And there, nestled at the center, the bracelet. Elena lifts it carefully, silver links catching the lamp's glow. The pendant, unique, almost antique in design, dangles as she holds it up. Half of something larger, its edge showing where it once connected to another piece. My mother wore this every day of her life, until the day she didn't, Elena's voice narrates. She told me it was a reminder that even broken things hold beauty, that someday I would understand what the other half looked like. Turning the bracelet over, Elena traces the engraving with her fingertip. Forever isn't long enough, J. The initial, the only concrete evidence of the man who contributed to her existence. Just a single letter, a solitary island in a sea of questions. The memory surfaces with painful clarity. Elena at 10 years old, curiosity finally overwhelming caution. Who is my daddy? Why doesn't he live with us? Her mother's face, always so open, so readable, had closed like a book snapped shut. He's someone who couldn't stay, sweetheart. Sometimes love isn't enough when the world has other plans. Now, 24 years later, Elena still puzzles over those cryptic words. What plans? What world? The questions have only multiplied since her mother's death 5 years ago, taking any possibility of answers to her grave. Elena returns the items to the box one by one, each a puzzle piece to a picture she cannot complete. The photograph goes in last. Her mother at perhaps 25, standing beside a hospital bed, new nurse's uniform crisp and white, eyes bright with purpose. "You never told me if you regretted it," Elena whispers, touching the smiling face. "How are keeping me? Raising me alone, fighting so hard for both of us." The cedar lid closes with a soft sound like a sigh. Elena returns the box to its place beneath her bed, a ritual completed once more without revelation, without resolution. Outside her window, the city continues its evening rhythm, people returning to families, to connections, to known histories. Elena pulls her knees to her chest, suddenly feeling the emptiness of her apartment, the solitary nature of her carefully constructed life. "You can't miss what you never had," she tells herself, a mantra repeated through years of watching fathers walk daughters down aisles, of hearing patients call for their daddies in moments of pain, of wondering what it would feel like to be someone's beloved child. But the ache in her chest argues otherwise. The 47th floor corner office of Meridian Pharmaceuticals commands a view that reduces the city to a perfect miniature. Traffic flowing like blood through arteries, humans reduced to microscopic movement, all of life's messiness transformed into distant, manageable patterns. This is Jonathan Reynolds' vantage point, elevated, isolated, in control. At 56, he stands impeccably dressed in a tailored suit that likely costs more than what many of his employees earn in a month. Silver threads through his dark hair at the temples, lending him an air of distinguished authority that serves him well in boardrooms and benefit galas alike. "The Japanese market projections came in, Mr. Reynolds," his assistant says from the doorway, her voice measured, professional. "And your daughter's school called." Again, Jonathan's expression flickers, the briefest crack in a polished facade. "Tell them I'll call back this afternoon." The words emerge automatic, practiced, already forgotten, as his attention returns to the spreadsheets illuminating his computer screen. Alone again, he moves to the window, studying his reflections superimposed over the city below. He sees what others see: success personified, wealth embodied, power in human form. What remains invisible are the hollow spaces behind the image, the echoing rooms in the mansion where he rarely sleeps, the conversations that never happen. Over dinners he's too busy to attend. On his desk, a silver frame holds a photograph of 9-year-old Sophie, dark curls framing a solemn face that rarely smiles for cameras, but breaks into radiant joy when she believes no one is watching. Her eyes hold a wisdom beyond her years, the peculiar knowledge of children who understand they are loved but not fully seen. Jonathan's phone chimes with a calendar alert. Sophie, ballet recital, 7:30 p.m. He hesitates, finger hovering over the screen before dismissing the notification. The quarterly numbers take precedence, they always do. He'll make it up to her with a weekend trip, a special gift, another promise to do better next time. The intercom buzzes. "Mr. Reynolds, the board is waiting in the conference room." "On my way," he responds, straightening his already perfect tie, assuming the mantle of leadership as comfortably as he wears his custom suit. In the gleaming conference room, surrounded by men and women who respect his business acumen but know nothing of his private thoughts, Jonathan delivers projections and strategies with confident precision. They hang on his words. This man who built a pharmaceutical empire from a modest family business, who transformed a regional supplier into a global force. What they don't see is how his gaze occasionally drifts to the window, to the world, beyond the corporate bubble, to the life that happens while he's locked in meetings discussing profit margins and market share. "And that concludes the third quarter projections," he finishes smoothly. Questions. Later, as the room empties, Jonathan remains seated, ostensibly reviewing notes but actually staring at nothing. His mind drifting to a place it rarely visits during business hours, the past, specifically to a time before wealth and widowhood, before Sophie was born, before he made the choice that defined everything that followed. His phone rings, pulling him back to the present. Sophie's school again. This time he answers. "Mr. Reynolds, it's Grace Hamilton from Westlake Academy. I'm afraid Sophie isn't feeling well. She's complaining of hives and some difficulty breathing. Our nurse recommends—" "I'll be there in 20 minutes, Jonathan interrupts, already standing, already moving. The spreadsheets, the projections, the waiting signatures, all instantly relegated to irrelevance. In the private elevator that whisks him from corporate heights to street-level reality, Jonathan's carefully constructed composure begins to crack. Sophie, his quiet, thoughtful daughter, his only family, the sole person who brings light to his carefully ordered existence, needs him. And for once, nothing else matters. Le Jardin's soft lighting and hushed conversations create the illusion of intimacy, despite its status as the city's most exclusive restaurant. White-gloved servers move silently between tables, attending to the wealthy and influential with practiced deference. This is Jonathan's natural habitat, a place where his name opens doors, where the maitre d' greets him with respectful familiarity, where the best table is always available. Sophie sits across from him, small in the oversized chair, her dark curls contrasting with a pale blue dress chosen by the nanny. Her legs, too short to reach the floor, swing slightly beneath the table, the only outward sign of a child's natural energy struggling against the constraints of adult expectations. "How was school today?" Jonathan asks, the question emerging with the automatic quality of a ritual more than genuine curiosity. Sophie's eyes, so like her mother's, lift from the menu she's been studying with unusual intensity. "We dissected a frog in science," she offers. "Mine was a girl, she had eggs inside." Jonathan nods, his attention divided between his daughter and the business email he's scanning beneath the table's edge. "That's interesting, sweetheart. Did you—" His phone buzzes with an incoming call from Tokyo. "Excuse me, Sophie. I need to take this." As Jonathan steps away from the table, phone pressed to his ear, Sophie watches him with an expression too complex for a 9-year-old. Understanding, disappointment, and acceptance, blending into something that resembles resignation. She returns her attention to the elaborate menu, lips moving silently as she encounters words like reduction and emulsion. When Jonathan returns several minutes later, Sophie has already ordered for both of them, a responsibility she's assumed with increasing frequency. "The salmon for you," she explains, "because you said fish is brain food, and you have that big meeting tomorrow." Something constricts in Jonathan's chest, pride mixed with an uncomfortable awareness of how often this child accommodates his distracted presence. "Thank you, Sophie. That was very thoughtful." The food arrives, artfully arranged on oversized plates. Sophie picks at her pasta, her fork pushing peas into geometric patterns rather than delivering them to her mouth. "You should eat," Jonathan encourages, making a conscious effort to close his email app. "You've been looking pale lately. Are you feeling all right?" Sophie shrugs, a gesture caught between childhood and something older, wearier. "I guess—" She takes a small bite of pasta, then reaches for her water glass. "Daddy, do you remember Mom?" The question lands like a physical blow. Jonathan's fork pauses midway to his mouth. "Of course I do," he says carefully, setting the utensil down. "Why do you ask?" The other girls at school talk about their moms all the time. They know things like their favorite colors and if they like to sing. I don't know anything. Jonathan studies his daughter's face, the earnest curiosity, the tentative hope for information about the woman who died bringing her into the world. He owes her these memories, these connections to her past. But the words stick in his throat. She loved the color green, he finally offers. Not bright green, but the deep green of pine trees in winter. And she— His phone buzzes again. Sophie's face closes like a flower at dusk. "It's okay," she says, the words too practiced, too understanding. "You can answer it." But this time Jonathan declines the call. "No, this is our dinner. Now what else would you like to know about your mother?" The genuine smile that transforms Sophie's face makes his decision instantly worthwhile. She leans forward, eager, alive with curiosity. "Did she like to read? What was her favorite book?" did she sing? As Jonathan reaches into memories long sealed away, Sophie takes another bite of her pasta. Then another. Her enjoyment of both the food and the conversation seems to grow with each passing minute, until suddenly it doesn't. The first scratch at her neck might be easily missed, a casual gesture, nothing more. But the second is more deliberate, and when Sophie reaches for her water glass, Jonathan notices the slight tremor in her hand. "Sophie, are you all right? My throat feels funny," she says, her voice changing, roughening. "And my tongue?" "Curse?" Jonathan leans forward, alarmed by the rapidly developing flush on his daughter's face, the way her fingers now pull at the collar of her dress. "Sophie, what's happening?" "It's hot," she manages, the words coming with increasing difficulty. "Can't breathe right." With growing horror, Jonathan watches as raised welts begin to appear on Sophie's neck, creeping upward toward her jawline. Her breathing becomes audibly labored, each inhale a struggle. "Help!" Jonathan is on his feet, napkin tumbling forgotten to the floor. "My daughter needs help. Does anyone have an EpiPen?" The restaurant's polished calm shatters. Servers converge. Diners turn to stare. Someone calls for the manager. Sophie's eyes, wide with fear, lock onto her father's face as her fingers clutch at her throat. "Allergic reaction?" a diner from a nearby table says, approaching with the confident demeanor of someone with medical training. "Does she have known allergies?" "No, I don't. She's never..." Jonathan's customary eloquence fails him as panic takes hold. His daughter is struggling to breathe before his eyes, her lips taking on a frightening bluish tinge. "Hospital," the stranger advises firmly. "Now, don't wait for an ambulance." Jonathan needs no further prompting. "I could be in DC. He sweeps Sophie into his arms, her weight terrifyingly slight against his chest. "Hold on, sweetheart," he whispers against her hair. "Just hold on." As he rushes toward the exit, Sophie's breathing becoming more labored with each passing second, Jonathan is seized by a fear unlike anything he's ever known, more primitive and powerful than any boardroom crisis or financial collapse. This is his child, his only family, fighting for air in his arms. And all his wealth, all his influence, all his careful planning and control mean absolutely nothing in this moment. While the most primal fear consumes Jonathan, a father witnessing his daughter in critical danger, across town, a woman who has never known of their existence is ending an ordinary workday. Fate, with its invisible threads, is silently weaving their separate lives toward a destined intersection that none of them could possibly foresee. Twilight softens the sharp edges of the city as Elena checks the supply cabinet one last time before her shift ends. Her methodical count of gauze packages and sterile dressings is a ritual that centers her, creates order in a profession defined by chaos. The emergency department hums with its evening rhythm, somewhat quieter than the daytime rush but vibrating with its own particular tension, like an instrument tuned to a minor key. "You're here late again," Dr. Rivera comments, as he updates a chart at the nurse's station. "Your shift ended 30 minutes ago." Elena smiles without looking up from her inventory sheet, just making sure everything's ready for night crew. You know how Tuesdays can get. What she doesn't say, that her empty apartment holds no particular drawer, that the purposeful environment of the hospital feels more like home than the quiet rooms where she sleeps and eats. Here at least she knows exactly who she is and what she's meant to do. Across town, Jonathan's luxury sedan cuts through traffic with desperate purpose, each red light an agony of restraint. In the passenger seat, Sophie's breathing has become a frightening wheeze, her small chest rising and falling with increasing effort. The welts have spread across her face, transforming her delicate features. "Stay with me, Sophie," Jonathan urges, one hand on the steering wheel, the other reaching across to grasp his daughter's fingers. "We're almost there, sweetheart. Almost there." Sophie's eyes, wide with fear and growing confusion, fix on her father's face. She tries to speak, but manages only a strangled sound that cuts through Jonathan like physical pain. He's made 1,000 important decisions in boardrooms, negotiated billion-dollar contracts, navigated complex corporate takeovers, but none of that prepared him for this moment of pure, distilled terror. His child is slipping away before his eyes, and his extensive resources, his connections, his influence, all useless. Back at Westside Community Health Center, Eleanor finally surrenders to the end of her shift, retrieving her bag from her locker and exchanging her hospital shoes for walking sneakers. She waves goodbye to colleagues, declining an invitation for after-work drinks with genuine regret. Next time, she promises, knowing the words are likely empty, but needing to believe in future connections, future belongings. As she walks toward the exit, the radio at the nurse's station crackles with an incoming alert. 9-year-old female, severe allergic reaction, respiratory distress, estimated arrival 4 minutes. Elena pauses mid-step, her bag halfway onto her shoulder. She's not on call. She's worked 12 hours already. The night shift is fully staffed, but something, instinct perhaps, or the cosmic alignment of moments that occasionally governs human lives, holds her in place. Meanwhile, Jonathan's car screeches into the emergency bay, tires protesting. Against asphalt. He's at Sophie's door in an instant, lifting her now limp form into his arms, her head lolling against his shoulder in a way that sends fresh terror coursing through him. The emergency department doors slide open with a hiss as Jonathan rushes in, Sophie's limp form cradled against his chest. Time seems to slow as he crosses the threshold, his daughter's breathing now a terrifying wheeze. Please, someone, help my daughter! The words tear from his throat, stripped of all composure that normally defines him. In this moment, he isn't Jonathan Reynolds, pharmaceutical magnate. He's simply a father watching his child struggle for air, Elena's. Instincts take over when she hears his cry. Abandoning her bag, she moves toward them with fluid efficiency, though her shift had officially ended minutes ago. "I need a gurney and epinephrine stat," she calls out, her voice clear and commanding. The team responds immediately, surrounding the small figure in Jonathan's arms. "I'm Elena Parker, emergency nurse," she says, already assessing Sophie with practiced hands. "How long has she been like this?" 20 minutes, maybe, Jonathan manages, his voice cracking. It happened so fast. 1 minute she was fine, eating dinner, the next she couldn't breathe properly. "Any known allergies?" Eleanor asks as Sophie is transferred to the examination table, her small chest heaving with the effort to draw air. "No, none that she's never had a reaction before." "What did she eat tonight?" Elena's hands move with practiced precision, checking vitals, establishing an airway assessment, all while maintaining the calm that settles panic like nothing else can. "Pasta with some kind of sauce." I wasn't paying proper attention. Guilt flashes across Jonathan's face, the confession of a parent who suddenly realizes an oversight might cost everything. "It's okay," Elena assures him. "First reactions often come without warning. You got her here quickly, that's what matters." The treatment room becomes a hive of focused activity. Elena leads with quiet authority, inserting an IV line while issuing clear directives. Jonathan finds himself guided to the side, suddenly an observer in the battle for his daughter's life. "Sophie's having an anaphylactic reaction," Eleanor explains, her hands never ceasing their work. "We're giving her epinephrine to open her airways and reduce the swelling." Jonathan watches as the medication flows into his daughter's arm, his entire world narrowed to the rise and fall of her chest. Is she going to? He can't complete the question. Elena's eyes meet his, and in that look is something unexpected, not just professional reassurance, but human understanding. She's responding to the medication. See how her breathing is already easier. The immediate danger is passing. Relief floods through him with such force that his knees nearly buckle. He steadies himself against the wall, suddenly aware of how completely undone he is, his carefully maintained composure shattered. "Thank you," he manages, the words wholly inadequate for what he feels. "She's going to be fine," Elena assures him softly. As the emergency stabilizes, Jonathan finds himself watching Eleanor, the quiet authority in her movements, the gentle way she speaks to Sophie. What he doesn't see is how Elena steals glances at him when his attention is on Sophie, studying the set of his shoulders, the shape of his hands. Only when he turns, suddenly, catching her gaze, does she realize she's been staring. "I'm sorry," she says quickly. "You just remind me of someone." Before he can respond, Sophie's small voice interrupts. "Daddy?" Jonathan moves to his daughter's side, taking her small hand in his. "I'm here, sweetheart. You're going to be just fine." In the doorway, Eleanor pauses to observe this tableau of father and daughter, struck by the depth of connection evident in Jonathan's protective stance. Something stirs within her, a recognition of love's fierce protection, but also a curious emptiness, an echo of questions long carried about her own unknown father. As she turns to complete Sophie's admission forms, Eleanor catches a glimpse of her reflection in a glass cabinet, and for the briefest moment, she sees something of Jonathan Reynolds in her own features. The thought comes unbidden, irrational, and she dismisses it quickly. Yet as she walks away, the silver bracelet at her wrist, her mother's treasured possession, seems heavier somehow, as if suddenly weighted with unasked questions and unexpected possibilities. Night settles over the hospital, hushing the corridors and dimming the harshness of the day. In Sophie's room, Jonathan sits beside the bed, his hand engulfing his daughter's smaller one, his eyes never leaving her sleeping face. The steady rise and fall of her chest has become his meditation, each breath a small miracle after the evening's terror. The soft squeak of rubber soles announces Elena's approach before she appears in the doorway. She pauses there, clipboard in hand, taking in the tableau. Jonathan Reynolds, who commands boardrooms and manages billions, reduced to the most essential human role, parent keeping vigil. There's something vulnerable about him now. His expensive suit jacket draped over the chair, shirt sleeves rolled up, hair slightly disheveled. "Her vitals are stable," Eleanor says softly, entering the room. "Doctor Mercer will check on her shortly, but I wanted to see how she was doing myself before my shift ends." Jonathan looks up, fatigue etched across his features. "You're still here? I thought emergency staff changed hours ago." Eleanor smiles, approaching Sophie's bedside. "Technically, my shift ended before you even arrived, but I like to follow through when I can. That's uncommon. Dedication. Maybe..." Elena checks Sophie's IV line, her touch gentle enough not to disturb the sleeping child. "Or maybe I just know what it's like to be in a hospital bed with no familiar faces nearby." The words escape before she can filter them, a rare personal disclosure that surprises even her. Something about this man and his daughter has slipped past her carefully maintained professional boundaries. "You were hospitalized as a child?" Jonathan asks, his interest appearing genuine. Elena nods, adjusting Sophie's blanket. "Pneumonia when I was 8. My mother couldn't stay, she was working multiple jobs. The nurses became my temporary family." "Is that why you became a nurse?" "Part of it," she acknowledges. "There was a nurse named Grace who made me feel less afraid. I wanted to be that person for someone else." A small sound from Sophie interrupts their conversation. The child stirs, eyelids fluttering open, momentarily confused. "Daddy?" Her voice is raspy, still affected by the swelling. "I'm right here, sweetheart." Jonathan leans closer, smoothing her hair back from her forehead. Sophie's gaze shifts, finding Elena. Recognition dawns slowly. "You're the nurse who helped me breathe again." Elena's smile warms. "That's right. How are you feeling?" "Now, better. My throat doesn't feel so tight anymore." Sophie's attention drops to Elena's wrist, where her sleeve has ridden up slightly, revealing the silver bracelet. "That's pretty." Elena follows her gaze, touching the bracelet. "Thank you. It was my mother's." "Where is your mother now?" Sophie asks with the direct curiosity only children possess. Jonathan begins to intervene. "Sophie, that's a personal question," but Elena shakes her head slightly. "It's okay," she tells him before addressing Sophie. "My mother passed away a few years ago, but having her bracelet makes me feel like she's still with me sometimes." Sophie nods with solemn understanding beyond her years. "My mother's in heaven too. I never got to meet her." The simple statement creates an unexpected bridge between them, two souls who know the particular emptiness of maternal loss. Elena feels a tug of connection to this child that transcends professional care. "I'm sorry to hear that," she says softly. "It's hard to miss someone you never got to know." "Daddy tells me stories about her," Sophie continues, her small hand still clasped in her father's. "He says I have her smile and her kindness." Jonathan clears his throat, emotion making his voice rougher. "You also have her determination. She would be very proud of how brave you've been tonight." Elena watches this exchange with a peculiar ache in her chest. There's something strangely familiar about him that she can't place. Something in the way his eyes crinkle at the corners. "I should go," she says, reluctantly breaking the moment. "The doctor will be in shortly." As she turns to leave, Jonathan suddenly speaks. "Miss Parker, Elena." He seems to struggle with words. "What you did tonight, I don't know how to thank you adequately." Elena pauses in the doorway, bracelet catching the light. "I was just doing my job." "No," Jonathan says with quiet certainty. "It was more than that. You saved her, but you also made her feel safe. Made me feel like we weren't alone. That's not just a job. That's a gift." The sincerity in his voice catches her off guard. Before she can respond, Jonathan's gaze fixes on her bracelet with sudden intensity. "That design," he says, something strange entering his voice. "May I see it closer?" The unexpected request leaves Elena momentarily confused, but she extends her wrist, allowing him a better view of the silver pendant with its distinctive pattern, half of what was once a hole, its edge showing where it connected to another piece. Jonathan's face drains of color as he stares at the bracelet. His fingers lift, almost touching it, then withdraw as if burned. Where did you get this?" "I told you it was my mother's," Elena replies, increasingly puzzled by his reaction. "She wore it every day of her life." "And your mother's name?" he asks, his voice barely above a whisper. "Catherine Miller," Elena answers, watching his expression carefully. "Did you know her?" Something shifts in Jonathan's expression. Recognition, shock, disbelief. A cascade of emotions too complex to name. He opens his mouth to speak, then closes it again, eyes darting between the bracelet and Elena's face, as if seeing her truly for the first time. "Dad!" Sophie's voice, concerned now, breaks the tension. "What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." The innocent observation seems to snap Jonathan back to the present moment. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just tired from all the excitement." But his eyes remain fixed on Elena, filled with questions he's not yet ready to voice. Elena takes a step back, suddenly uncomfortable under his scrutiny. "I should go. The night nurse will be checking in regularly." As she walks away, Elena can feel Jonathan's gaze following her, heavy with something that feels dangerously like recognition. The bracelet at her wrist seems to burn against her skin, suddenly transformed from cherished memento to something far more significant. A key, perhaps, to a door she's never been able to open. Have you ever seen someone look at an ordinary object like it holds the answers to life's greatest mysteries? As Jonathan's face drains of color at the sight of Elena's bracelet, what secrets do you think are about to unravel between these strangers? Share your theories below about Catherine Miller's bracelet, and join us next week as a simple silver pendant threatens to shatter everything these two thought they knew about themselves. Morning arrives with hospital routine, fresh staff shifts, breakfast carts, and monitor beeps. Jonathan watches from Sophie's room, having exchanged his rumpled suit for fresh clothes. He hasn't left his daughter's side, rescheduling meetings. While Sophie sleeps, but his mind isn't on pharmaceutical projections. It's fixed on Elena Parker and her impossible bracelet. He scrolls to a photo kept hidden for 2 decades, Catherine Miller laughing on a Boston pier, wearing a silver bracelet identical to Elena's. Except in this image, the pendant is whole, not yet broken into the 2 pieces that would symbolize their parting. "I kept half, she kept half," he whispers. If Catherine was Elena's mother. The mathematical certainty hits him. Physically, Elena Parker, born 8 to 9 months after that summer with Catherine, would be his daughter. Dr. Patel enters with a nurse who isn't Elena. Jonathan feels an irrational disappointment. "Mr. Reynolds?" Sophie's responding excellently. the swelling has subsided and her breathing tests show normal function. The news should bring relief. But Jonathan's mind splits between concern for his younger daughter and the staggering possibility of an older one he never knew existed. "When can we go home?" he asks as Sophie stirs awake. "Likely this afternoon, Doctor," Patel responds. "However, we need to discuss Sophie's newly identified allergies. Tests suggest the trigger was a tree nut in the pesto sauce." "Is Nurse Parker on duty today?" The question escapes before he can stop himself. "Eleanor's off today. She'll be back tomorrow morning." The new nurse smiles kindly, but Jonathan sees Sophie's disappointment mirror his own. In one crisis, Elena has become important to them both, for entirely different reasons than either realizes. As Dr. Patel explains Sophie's care plan, Jonathan's thoughts drift to 20 years earlier, to Catherine Miller, whose intelligence had captivated him completely. Their romance ended when his parents discovered he was wasting time with a scholarship girl from nowhere. The ultimatum was brutal: end the relationship or they would ensure Catherine never worked in any reputable medical institution. At 22, Jonathan lacked courage to defy them. Catherine, ever practical, pushed him away. Their final meeting, Catherine returning his gifts, keeping only the bracelet. "I'm not pregnant if that's what you're worried about," she had said. "There's nothing tying us together anymore." Had she lied to protect him? Or had she not known? Yet the timing matches Elena's age. Mr. Reynolds?" "Doctor." Patel's voice pulls him back. "Do you understand the EpiPen instructions?" "Yes." "Could I get Nurse Parker's contact information? I'd like to thank her properly." "We can't release staff information, but I can pass along your request." After they leave, Sophie looks up. "You want to talk to Elena again, don't you?" "Yes, sweetheart. She reminds me of someone I used to know. The way she looked at you was different," Sophie observes with startling insight. "Like she was trying to remember something important. You're too observant for your own." "Good. Mom would have liked her, I think." The comment catches Jonathan off guard. "What makes you say that?" "Elena feels real. Not like the ladies who come to your parties and laugh too loud at things that aren't funny." Jonathan chuckles at his daughter's assessment, feeling a pang of guilt. Has he surrounded them with such superficial connections? Later, as Sophie naps, Jonathan calls his most trusted investigator. "Frank, I need information on Elena Parker, emergency nurse at Westside Community Health Center, particularly her family history. This is personal and confidential." As he ends the call, anxiety seizes him. What if he's wrong? Or, worse, what if he's right? Either way, his carefully ordered world stands on the brink of change. Meanwhile, in the hospital cafeteria, Eleanor recounts last night's events to her friend Darlene. "And then he just stared at my bracelet like he'd seen a ghost." "Strange how millionaires always manage to be dramatic," Darlene comments. "It wasn't dramatic. It was genuine, like he recognized it somehow." "Well, he obviously made an impression," Darlene observes. "You came in on your day off just to check on his daughter." Elena feels her cheeks warm. "I came to check on my patient." Does this have anything to do with the fact that he looks like he walked off the cover of Fortune magazine? No. There's something about him that feels important somehow. "In all the years I've known you, I've never seen you this curious about anyone. Maybe it's worth exploring." A text message appears. "Ms. Parker, this is Jonathan Reynolds. Sophie's been asking for you. Would you consider meeting us for coffee? There's something important I need to discuss with you." Elena stares at the message, heart racing. Why does the prospect of seeing him again fill her with both anticipation and dread? "Something wrong?" Darlene asks. "No," Eleanor replies slowly. "Something beginning." The elegant cafe Jonathan has chosen sits halfway between Eleanor's modest apartment and the gleaming tower that houses Meridian Pharmaceuticals' headquarters. A neutral territory of sorts, though nothing about the plush seating feels neutral to Elena. As she hesitantly pushes open the door 3 days after Sophie's discharge, she spots them immediately. Jonathan in an impeccably tailored suit and Sophie beside him, looking remarkably recovered, a children's book open between them. The sight stops Elena momentarily, a tableau of father-daughter intimacy that both warms and wounds her. Sophie sees her first, face lighting up. "Elena, you came!" She waves enthusiastically, causing several patrons to glance their way. Jonathan looks up, and something in his expression shifts when he sees Elena. Relief, perhaps, or confirmation of a suspicion. He stands as she approaches, a gesture of old-world courtesy. "Thank you for coming," he says, voice lower, and more personal than their hospital interactions. "Sophie's been talking about you constantly. I've been worried about her," Elena admits, taking the offered seat across from them. In her simple blouse and jeans, she feels conspicuously underdressed among the cafe's clearly affluent clientele. "I'm all better now," Sophie declares proudly, showing off a medical alert bracelet on her tiny wrist. "See, Daddy got me this special bracelet that tells people about my allergies." Elena smiles, genuinely touched by the child's enthusiasm. "That's excellent, Sophie. Very responsible. Like your special bracelet," Sophie adds, pointedly looking at Elena's wrist where the silver chain peeks out from under her sleeve. An awkward silence falls as Jonathan and Elena exchange a glance, both aware of the conversation that hovers unspoken between them. Jonathan breaks the tension by suggesting Sophie explore the children's reading nook, visible across the cafe. Once Sophie reluctantly retreats, Jonathan turns his full attention to Elena. "I appreciate you meeting us. I haven't been able to stop thinking about your bracelet." Elena's hand automatically covers the silver links at her wrist. "What about it?" Jonathan draws a deep breath. 20 years ago, I gave an identical bracelet to someone I cared for deeply. It was unique, custom designed. There couldn't be another like it. Elena's heart begins a peculiar cadence against her ribs. "My mother's name was Catherine Miller," she says quietly, watching his face carefully. "Did you know her?" The color drains from Jonathan's face at the name. "Catherine," he repeats, the name sounding like both prayer and pain on his lips. "Yes, I knew her." The confirmation sends a shiver through Elena despite the cafe's warmth. We were in love for a brief time. My family disapproved. Her background wasn't what they considered suitable for someone with the Reynolds name and future. The bitterness in his voice speaks of an old wound, still tender to the touch. "What happened?" Elena presses, even as part of her dreads the answer. "My parents threatened to cut me off completely, which I could have lived with, but they also promised to use their influence to destroy any chance Catherine had at the medical career she'd worked so hard for. They were powerful enough to do it." His eyes hold a plea for understanding. "We were young, idealistic. She broke things off, said she couldn't be responsible for me losing my family. The bracelet was my parting gift to her." Elena absorbs this information slowly, pieces of her history shifting. "When was this exactly?" "Summer of 2004. I was doing a business internship in Boston, where she was in nursing school." The timeline aligns perfectly with Elena's birth in early 2005. She swallows hard. Did you know she was pregnant?" Jonathan's expression freezes, eyes widening with shock that can't be feigned. "Pregnant? No. She told me she was taking precautions, and later, she specifically said there were no complications. I'm 34, Elena says simply. Born in February 2005. Do the math. The implication hangs in the air between them, too enormous to be immediately grasped. Jonathan stares at her face with new intensity, searching for what Elena suddenly realizes he must be seeing, traces of himself perhaps, or echoes of a younger Catherine. "She never told me," he finally whispers, voice cracking. "All these years I never knew." Across the cafe, Sophie looks up from her book, waving cheerfully at them. The sight breaks the trance-like state that has fallen over their table. "Are you saying?" Jonathan begins, then stops, seemingly unable to form the question directly. Elena forces herself to speak the words they're both thinking. "To us, I think you might be my father." The father I've spent my whole life wondering about. In the silence that follows, the cafe's ambient noise seems to fade away. Jonathan's hand, trembling slightly, moves across the table as if to touch hers, then stops, uncertain of his welcome. "I need to know for sure," he says finally. "There are tests. DNA testing, I know." Elena nods, her nurse's practicality asserting itself even as her emotional world tilts. "I think that would be wise before we draw any conclusions." Jonathan nods, something like hope and terror mingling in his expression. "Regardless of what those tests show, I want you to know that Catherine was extraordinary. I never stopped thinking about her, wondering what might have been if I'd been braver." The sincerity in his voice touches something in Eleanor that has been waiting all her life for these words, any words about the love that created her. She never spoke of you directly, but she always touched this bracelet when I asked about my father. Said it was a reminder that true love sometimes means letting go. Jonathan's carefully maintained composure cracks visibly. That sounds like her, always thinking of others before herself. Before Elena can respond, Sophie bounds back to the table. "Are you done with boring adult talk now?" she asks, squeezing between them. Her presence creates a sudden reality check. If Elena's suspicions are correct, this child is her half-sister, a concept too enormous to process in this crowded cafe. "Almost done," Jonathan tells Sophie with remarkable steadiness. To Elena, he says, "We should proceed carefully for everyone's sake. I can arrange for discreet testing as soon as you're comfortable." Elena nods, suddenly overwhelmed. "I should go," she says, standing. "This is a lot to take in." "Will you come see us again?" Sophie asks, detecting the tension but not understanding its source. "Daddy makes really good pancakes on Sundays." The innocent invitation nearly undoes Elena completely. "Maybe sometime, Sophie. I'd like that." As she turns to leave, Jonathan speaks one last time, his voice pitched for her ears alone. "Whatever the results, Elena, thank you for saving my daughter, and for being brave enough to have this conversation." Walking away, Elena feels as though she's leaving a piece of herself behind, or perhaps finding pieces she never knew were missing. The bracelet at her wrist seems heavier somehow, weighted with new meaning and old secrets finally coming to light. The sleek modern laboratory occupies the entire 15th floor of a downtown medical building, its glass walls and state-of-the-art equipment speaking to the kind of privilege that has always surrounded Jonathan Reynolds. As he waits in the ennuyé private consultation room, his eyes repeatedly check his watch, an unconscious tell of his uncharacteristic nervousness. "Mr. Reynolds." The lab director herself approaches, manila envelope in hand. "The results you requested. As specified, no electronic records have been created." Jonathan accepts the envelope with a carefully steady hand. "Thank you for the discretion, Dr. Weber." When she leaves, he stares at the sealed envelope for a long moment. Inside lies the confirmation or refutation of a truth that has haunted him since seeing Elena's bracelet. Part of him urges immediate action, while another hesitates, aware that opening this envelope means his life will forever divide into before and after this moment. Finally, he breaks the seal, unfolding the clinical document with its charts and percentages. His eyes scan quickly to the conclusion: 98% probability of paternity. Elena Parker is his daughter. The paper trembles slightly in his hand. A child. He has another child. A daughter who grew up without him, who never knew him, who spent 34 years wondering about the father who was absent from her life. He thinks of all the milestones he missed. First steps, first words, first day of school, graduation, all the moments that define a father's relationship with his daughter. The weight of those absences crashes down on him with physical force. And Catherine, she had carried and raised their child alone, never telling him, never seeking his support. Had she truly believed she was protecting him? Or had she simply decided he wasn't worth the complication? The office phone rings, jolting him from his thoughts. His assistant's voice comes through the speaker. "Mr. Reynolds, the board is waiting for your quarterly presentation. Shall I tell them you're on your way?" "Cancel it," he responds, surprising himself with the decisiveness. Reschedule for next week. Something urgent has come up. As he drives toward home, Jonathan's mind races with questions. Should he tell Sophie immediately? How? Will she react to suddenly having an adult half-sister? What does Elena want from this relationship, if anything at all? He pulls into his driveway, the mansion's imposing facade suddenly striking him as cold and impersonal, nothing like the warm, lived-in quality of Elena's modest apartment that he'd glimpsed in the background of their video call to arrange the DNA test. Inside, Sophie is at the kitchen island with her nanny, working on homework. Her face brightens when she sees him. "Daddy, you're home early." The simple joy in her expression loosens something in his chest. He dismisses the nanny with unusual abruptness, then sits beside his younger daughter, studying her face with new awareness. "Is something wrong?" Sophie asks, perceptive as always. "No, sweetheart. Actually, I've been thinking about what you said about Elena." Sophie's expression turns curious. "That I want her to come over again." "Yes," Jonathan says carefully. "Would you like it if Elena became a more regular part of our lives?" The question is both genuine and a test, a way to gauge how Sophie might react to the larger revelation that waits in the wings. "I would love that." Sophie's enthusiasm is immediate and unguarded. "She doesn't talk to me like I'm a baby, and she makes you smile differently." The observation catches him off guard. Differently, how Sophie considers this with endearing seriousness. Like you're not just being polite, like you're actually happy. The simple assessment lands with unexpected impact. When was the last time he'd been genuinely happy, rather than merely satisfied with achievements or acquisitions? "I'm going to invite her to dinner soon," he tells Sophie. "There's something important I need to discuss with her." "About?" "Her bracelet matching the one in your special box," Sophie asks innocently. Jonathan freezes, staring at his daughter with shock. "How do you know about that box?" Sophie's expression turns guilty. "I was looking for extra-colored pencils in your office. The box was in your desk drawer. It has pictures of a pretty lady and a bracelet just like Elena's. Are they the same person?" For a moment, Jonathan is torn between paternal disapproval of snooping and amazement at his daughter's observational skills. "The woman in those pictures was named Catherine," he finally says. "She was very special to me a long time ago." Was she Elena's mommy? The directness of the question takes his breath away. Children, with their uncanny ability to cut through adult complications to the essential truth, continue to astonish. "Him? What makes you ask that?" He manages. Sophie shrugs. "Elena has her mommy's bracelet, and she looks a little like the lady in your pictures." Jonathan takes Sophie's small hands in his, overcome with love for this perceptive child, and sudden hope for the connection that might be possible with his newly discovered daughter. "Sophie, there's something very important I need to tell." "Yes, sir." "It might be a bit confusing at first, but I think it could be wonderful news for both of us." As he begins to explain in age-appropriate terms the concept of a half-sister, Jonathan feels as though he's stepping onto a bridge between his past and his future, a bridge built of truths too long unacknowledged and connections too long denied. Miles away in her apartment, Eleanor stares at an identical test result, emotions warring within her. The father she had imagined throughout her childhood, sometimes cruel for his abandonment, sometimes tragic in his unknown fate, has been replaced by a real man with a real life and another daughter. The abstract has become concrete, the phantom substantial. She picks up her phone, sees the 3 missed calls from Jonathan, and wonders what happens next in this story that has suddenly expanded beyond her solitary narrative to include characters she never expected to meet. Rain taps against Elena's apartment window, creating a soothing backdrop to the chaos of her thoughts. Her living room, normally a haven of orderly calm, bears witness to her inner turmoil. Photo albums spread across the coffee table, her mother's journals stacked beside them, the cedar memory box open with its contents carefully arranged. She's searching for clues, for any hint that Catherine might have left about Jonathan Reynolds. How could her mother never have mentioned that Elena's father was from one of the city's wealthiest families? How could she have kept such a significant secret? The DNA results lay beside her on the couch, clinical confirmation of what the bracelet had first suggested. Jonathan Reynolds, pharmaceutical magnate, millionaire, father to Sophie, is also her biological father. Elena's phone buzzes with another text from him. "I understand you need space. When you're ready to talk, I'm here. No pressure. No expectations." It's the third such message since the test results arrived yesterday. His restraint surprises her. No demands, no overwhelming gestures, just quiet acknowledgement of her need to process this revelation at her own pace. She picks up one of her mother's journals from 2004, the year she would have known Jonathan. Catherine's elegant handwriting fills the pages with observations about nursing school, friends, daily life, but conspicuously absent is any mention of a relationship with a wealthy business student. It's as if Catherine had deliberately excised that part of her life from her written record. A knock at her door interrupts her investigation. She opens it to find Darlene holding a paper bag that emits the comforting aroma of fresh pastries. "You've been avoiding my calls," Darlene states without preamble, brushing past Elena into the apartment. "Had you called in sick for the first time in 3 years? Something's up and I brought reinforcements." She waves the bag enticingly. Elena manages a small smile. "That's playing dirty." Friendship sometimes requires tactical advantages, Darlene counters, taking in the research materials scattered across the living room. "What's all this?" Elena hesitates, then decides that carrying this secret alone has become too heavy. "Remember Jonathan Reynolds, the millionaire whose daughter had the allergic reaction? Hard to forget. Tall, handsome, looks like he could buy the hospital if he wanted to," Darlene says, setting down the pastries. "What about him?" Eleanor takes a deep breath. "He's my father." Darlene freezes mid-motion, pastry halfway to her mouth. "I'm sorry. What did..." "You just say, Jonathan Reynolds is my biological father. I have the DNA test to prove it." Elena hands over the lab results, watching her friend's expression shift from disbelief to astonishment. "Holy. How did you even... When did you..." Darlene stutters, scanning the document. "Start from the beginning, all of it." Elena pours out the story. The bracelet recognition, the cafe meeting, the revelation about her mother's relationship with Jonathan, the DNA test that confirmed what they both suspected. "So the millionaire who burst into our ER last week is the mystery father you've been wondering about your entire life." Darlene shakes her head in disbelief. "That's not coincidence, Elena. That's destiny or something." "I don't believe in destiny," Elena says automatically, though recent events have tested that certainty. "Well, destiny sure seems to believe in you." Darlene gestures toward the scattered memorabilia. "Found anything that explains why your mom never told him about you?" Elena sighs, closing one of the journals. "Nothing definitive, but from what Jonathan told me, his family threatened to destroy her career if she stayed with him. Maybe she thought telling him about the pregnancy would only complicate things. Or maybe she was protecting you both," Darlene suggests. "Your mom was one of the most thoughtful people I ever met. She wouldn't have made that decision lightly." Elena nods, tears suddenly threatening. "I keep thinking about all those times I asked about my father, and she'd just say he couldn't be part of our lives. She never said a bad word about him, never let me think I was unwanted or abandoned. Because you weren't," Darlene says gently. "Not by him anyway. He didn't abandon you. He never knew about you." The simple truth lands with surprising force. All these years, Elena had carried the weight of perceived rejection, building her identity around the absence of a father who, as it turns out, never chose to leave her at all. "So what now?" Darlene asks, breaking the thoughtful silence. "Are you going to meet with him again?" Eleanor touches her bracelet, the tangible link between past and present. "He wants me to come to dinner, meet Sophie properly. He's already told her I'm her half-sister." "And how do you feel about that?" "Terrified. Curious. Angry sometimes when I think about what could have been if his family hadn't interfered. Then guilty for feeling angry when my mother gave me such a good life." Eleanor shakes her head, overwhelmed by the emotional tangle. "And underneath it all, there's this ridiculous childish hope that maybe Maybe I can have the father I always wondered about. Darlene reaches across the coffee table, squeezing Eleanor's hand. That hope isn't ridiculous, it's human. And from what little I saw of Jonathan Reynolds, he seemed genuinely devoted to his daughter. Both his daughters now. I'm 34 years old, Elena says, the reality of her adult independence at odds with these newly awakened childhood longings. I don't need a father anymore. Maybe not, Darlene concedes. But perhaps you both need the connection anyway. The chance to know each other, to understand where you come from. Elena's phone buzzes again with another text. This time it's a photo. Sophie holding up a crayon drawing of 3 stick figures labeled Daddy, Sophie, and Elena, with a message. Sophie wants to know if you like lasagna. It's her specialty, with some help from me. The simple, ordinary invitation tugs at something deep in Elena's chest. Not the grand gestures one might expect from a wealthy man discovering a long-lost child, but something more valuable, an authentic attempt to build a relationship. You're going to go, aren't you? Darlene asks, reading Elena's expression. Yes, Elena admits, finally typing a response. I think I am. The Reynolds estate sprawls across 3 manicured acres, its colonial architecture speaking of old money and established privilege. Elena sits in her modest car at the end of the sweeping driveway, gathering courage. The contrast between this mansion and the small apartments she shared with her mother throughout childhood couldn't be more stark. You don't belong here, whispers an insecure voice in her mind. She silences it with practiced determination. Her worth has never been determined by material possessions. Catherine had taught her that from the beginning. As she finally drives toward the house, Elena notices the front door open. Sophie bursts out, clearly having watched for her arrival, with Jonathan following at a measured pace. The sight of them, father and daughter, now her family by biological fact if not yet by emotional reality, sends a surge of complex feelings. Through her, "You came," Sophie calls, bouncing with excitement as Elena parks. "Dad said you might change your mind." "Sophie," Jonathan admonishes gently, reaching them, "give Elena some space." But Elena finds herself smiling at the child's enthusiasm. "It's okay. I'm glad to see you too, Sophie." Jonathan meets her eyes with a careful assessment. "Thank you for coming," he says simply, the words carrying weight beyond their surface, meaning. Elena nods, suddenly aware of the small gift bag she's clutching too tightly. "I brought dessert." "Nothing fancy, just chocolate chip cookies." "I baked them myself." "You can bake?" Sophie asks with newfound respect. "Dad always burns cookies." "I do not," Jonathan protests good-naturedly. "I strategically over-crisp them." The light moment eases some of Elena's tension as they enter the house. Inside, the home surprises her. While undeniably luxurious, it feels lived in with Sophie's artwork prominently displayed and comfortable furniture that invites relaxation. Sophie proves an enthusiastic guide, leading Eleanor through rooms that tell the story of their life together. Jonathan's study with family photos, Sophie's art room scattered with creative projects, a kitchen designed for actual cooking rather than mere show. "And this is the family wall," Sophie announces, bringing Eleanor to a hallway lined with photographs. "Dad says it's important to remember where we come from." Eleanor studies the images. Jonathan as a child with stern-looking parents, his wedding photos with a beautiful woman who must be Sophie's mother, and numerous pictures of Sophie from infancy onward. The visual timeline of a life she wasn't part of creates an unexpected ache. "Your mom was beautiful," Elena comments softly, looking at the wedding portrait. "That's what Dad says too. Her name was Rebecca." Sophie points to another photo of the woman in hospital scrubs. "She was a doctor. She died when I was being born." The matter-of-fact way Sophie states this painful truth speaks to how Jonathan has helped her process the loss, honestly, without excessive sentiment, but with clear respect. "Sometimes Dad gets sad when he looks at her pictures," Sophie confides, "but he says it's important to remember the people we love, even when it hurts a little." The wisdom in this child continually surprises Elena. Before she can respond, Jonathan calls them to dinner. The dining room balances elegance with warmth. Sophie proudly announces that she folded the napkins herself. Conversation flows easily around safe topics: Sophie's school projects, Eleanor's work at the hospital, Jonathan's company charity initiatives. As the meal progresses, Jonathan steers toward more personal territory. "I've been looking through old photographs," he says during a lull. "I found some of Catherine from that summer. I thought you might like to see them." Eleanor's fork pauses halfway to her mouth. "You kept pictures of her all this time?" Catherine was significant. "Even after we parted, I couldn't erase that chapter completely," Jonathan admits. "Would it be too difficult to look at them?" "No," Elena says quickly, surprising herself. "I'd like that very much." After Sophie is excused to prepare the cookies for dessert, Jonathan retrieves a small album from his study. "These were taken during the few months we had together," he explains. Elena opens it with reverent hands to find her mother's youthful face smiling back at her, Catherine vibrant and carefree in a way Elena had rarely witnessed. Beside her in most photos is a younger Jonathan, his resemblance to Elena suddenly striking. "She never looked this unburdened," Elena says softly, tracing her mother's laughing face. "Catherine carried the weight of responsibility from a very young age," Jonathan responds. "The Catherine I knew was intensely determined, but also had this remarkable capacity for joy when she allowed herself brief respites from duty." "That sounds like the mother I knew," Elena acknowledges, turning pages. "Always working, always planning, but then surprising me with spontaneous adventures when I least expected them." As she continues through the album, the undeniable resemblance between herself and these two young people stares back at her. Her mother's expressive eyes, her father's determined jawline, expressions and mannerisms that suddenly make sense, as inherited rather than coincidental. The reality of her parentage, abstract until now despite the DNA test, suddenly becomes tangible through these images of two people in love, unaware that their brief union would create a life that would continue long after their relationship ended. 3 weeks after that first dinner, Eleanor sits on a bench in Riverside Park, watching Jonathan approach with 2 coffee cups in hand. These weekly meetings have become a curious new constant in her life. "Pumpkin spice latte," he says, handing her one of the cups. The barista looks scandalized, "But you mentioned once it was your favorite." "The fact that you remembered that is both touching and slightly unnerving," Elena responds with dry humor. "Should I be concerned about your data collection?" "Habits," Jonathan chuckles. "Occupational hazard of being a father playing catch-up, trying to learn 34 years of preferences in weeks." "Speaking of catching up," Jonathan continues, "I brought something." He extracts a small envelope from his jacket. Inside is a faded photograph Elena's never seen. Her mother, visibly pregnant, sitting on a park bench, hand resting protectively over her rounded belly. Catherine's nursing school roommate. "Took this," Jonathan explains. "I tracked her down through alumni networks. She said your mother was the strongest person she'd ever known." Eleanor traces her mother's face. "She never kept pregnancy photos. I always wondered why. Maria said Catherine was careful about creating evidence. She seemed worried about someone discovering the truth." Jonathan pauses. "I think she was protecting you from my family's influence. Your family, would they really have interfered? My parents were..." "Controlling doesn't capture it. They built Meridian Pharmaceuticals from nothing. Any threat to that legacy was treated as an attack," he sighs. "After Catherine, they selected Rebecca as a more suitable partner. Proper background, proper connections." "Did you love her?" Sophie's mother. "Eventually, yes. Not at first," Jonathan answers honestly. "Rebecca knew about Catherine. We built something genuine together over time. Sophie said Rebecca was a doctor, pediatric surgeon. The irony is that my parents never got to see Sophie. They died in a car accident a year before. She was born." They sit in companionable silence, watching people stroll through the park. "There's something I've been meaning to ask," Jonathan says finally. "The pendant halves, I'd like to have them reunited. Would you be comfortable with that?" Elena considers it, turning her bracelet in the sunlight. "I think my mother would like that," she says. "She always said it was waiting to be completed, Jonathan smiles. I know an excellent jeweler. Perhaps we could make it a sort of ceremony. Sophie would love to be part of that too. Elena suggests. She's quite invested in our reconciliation. She talks about you constantly. Yesterday she asked if you could come to her science fair. Apparently, you're the only one who would really appreciate the medical accuracy. Elena laughs, touched by the child's desire to include her in ordinary family moments. There's a benefit gala next Saturday, Jonathan says hesitantly. Would you consider attending with Sophie and me? People will talk, Elena points out. The mysterious new daughter of Jonathan Reynolds will cause quite a stir. People always talk, he responds with unexpected lightness. The only question that matters is whether you're comfortable with it. I'll need to buy a suitable dress, she says, signaling acceptance. Hospital scrubs probably won't meet the gala dress code. As they part ways, Eleanor reflects on how rapidly her solitary life has expanded to include not just a father, but a sister. The bracelet at her wrist, soon to be made whole again, seems to pulse with the promise of completion, of circles closing and new ones beginning. The Westside Children's Hospital Benefit Gala transforms the historic Carrington Hotel ballroom into a glittering wonderland. Eleanor stands at the entrance, frozen by the opulence and the weight of what this evening represents. Her first public appearance as Jonathan Reynolds' daughter. Her reflection barely seems familiar. The simple navy gown Sophie helped her select hugs her figure with unexpected elegance, her mother's bracelet gleaming at her wrist. You look beautiful, Sophie whispers beside her. Like a princess in the books Dad reads me. Jonathan approaches, handsome, in his tuxedo. His face brightens visibly. My two favorite women, he says, offering an arm to each. Shall we make an entrance? The moment they step into the ballroom, Elena feels the subtle shift of attention. Curious glances, whispered questions. Jonathan steers them confidently through the crowd, making introductions. Elena Parker, my daughter, he says each time, without qualification or explanation. For you're enjoying this, Elena murmurs during a brief moment alone. Jonathan's smile is unapologetic. I've spent 20 years saying exactly what was expected. There's a surprising freedom in disrupting people's expectations. Mr. Reynolds, a sharp voice interrupts them. What an unexpected development in your family tree. The woman standing before them radiates disapproval. Jonathan's expression shifts subtly. Margaret, I wasn't aware you were on the committee this year. The Whitmores have supported this hospital since its founding, she replies, her gaze fixed on Elena. Much like the Reynolds family, traditions matter in our circles. As Jonathan reluctantly follows Margaret to a quieter corner, Elena watches their animated conversation with growing discomfort. The woman's gestures become increasingly agitated. Sophie slips her small hand into Elena's. Mrs. Whitmore doesn't like surprises. She always says Dad should have married her daughter after Mom died. Jonathan returns, tension evident. In his shoulders. Margaret sends her regards, he says with evident insincerity. She's remembered an urgent appointment elsewhere. What did she say to you? Elena asks quietly. Nothing I haven't heard before. Concerns about the company image, inappropriate timing, suggestions that your sudden appearance might be financially motivated. The implication stings. Perhaps this was a mistake. No, Jonathan says firmly. The mistake was allowing people like Margaret to dictate my choices for so many years. I lost 20 years with you because of their class prejudices. I won't lose another day. As the evening progresses, Elena becomes increasingly aware of the divide between Jonathan's world and her own, not just in wealth and privilege, but in basic assumptions about life. His casual $100,000 donation during the pledge drive represents more money than she'll earn in 2 years. Yet beneath the surface differences, she keeps finding unexpected connections. Jonathan's passion for medical research mirroring her dedication to healthcare, his subtle humor so similar to hers. As the orchestra begins playing, Jonathan turns to Eleanor. Would you do me the honor? I've missed so many father-daughter dances. The simple request, laden with decades of absence, creates a lump in her throat. Elena nods and follows him onto the dance floor. "I keep thinking about what my mother would make of all this," she admits as they dance. "Would she be happy?" "We found each other." Before Jonathan can answer, Sophie appears at their side, eyes bright with excitement. "Dad! Elena! The jeweler is here. He finished it early." Elena realizes what this means. The moment has come to reunite the two. Halves of the bracelet pendant, to complete the circle broken 20 years ago when her parents parted. In a quiet antechamber away from the gala's noise, the jeweler, an elderly man with gentle hands, lays out a velvet cloth. Sophie watches intently as Elena unfastens her mother's bracelet, and Jonathan removes the matching pendant half from his pocket. "It is rare to reunite pieces separated for so long," the jeweler says softly. "The metals remember each other. Side by side, the connection is unmistakable. Two broken edges that align perfectly." The jeweler examines them, nodding in satisfaction. "Are you certain you wish to join them permanently?" Once done, separating them would damage both pieces. The question carries obvious symbolism. "Yes," Eleanor says with quiet certainty. "They belong together." With delicate tools, the jeweler begins reuniting the silver halves. The room falls silent except for Sophie's occasional whispered questions. "What does the whole pendant mean?" Sophie asks. "Each half looks like just a curve, but together they make something. It's the ancient symbol for eternity." Jonathan explains, "A circle that has no beginning and no end." "There," the jeweler says finally. "The bond is complete." The restored pendant gleams on the velvet cloth, the seam where it was once broken now nearly invisible. The jeweler reattaches it to Elena's bracelet and presents it to her. As she fastens it around her wrist, Elena feels a curious sense of completion, as if some part of her that had always been slightly off balance has finally found its equilibrium. Sophie bounces excitedly. "Now you're officially part of our family. We should celebrate with cake." Jonathan laughs, then turns to Eleanor, his expression becoming serious. "There's something I need to tell you, something I should have mentioned earlier." The shift in his tone sends a flicker of apprehension through Eleanor. "What is it?" "It's about Margaret Whitmore. Her husband, Gerald, was on the board. When my parents were alive, he was also their closest confidant." Eleanor waits, sensing there's more to this story. "According to Margaret, my parents didn't just make threats about Catherine's career. They had her investigated after we broke up, including tracking her pregnancy. The revelation lands like a physical blow. They knew about me. All along, Margaret claims they did. That they paid Catherine to stay away permanently and never tell me about the baby." Jonathan's expression reflects his own shock. "I don't know if it's true, but it would explain why my mother was so adamant about never contacting you," Elena finishes. "Why she changed her name from Miller to Parker. When I was born." Elena moves toward a set of doors, stepping onto a small balcony. The cool night air helps clear her head as she processes this information that reframes her entire childhood. "If this is true," she says slowly, "then my mother didn't just keep us apart to protect your future or her career. She was paid to stay away." "I need to know the truth," Eleanor says finally, turning to face him. "All of it, whatever it is," Jonathan nods. "I've already called my lawyers. If such documents exist, they'll find them." The door opens, and Sophie peeks out. "The dessert is chocolate mousse cake. You're missing it." Her bright expression falters as she senses the tension. "Is everything okay?" Jonathan and Elena exchange a look, a silent agreement to protect Sophie from adult complications. "Everything's fine, sweetheart," Jonathan assures her. "We're just getting some fresh air." As they follow Sophie inside, Eleanor feels the weight of the restored pendant at her wrist. What began as a symbol of reconciliation now carries additional significance, a reminder that bringing broken things together often reveals fracture lines you never knew existed. The day after the gala dawns with grey skies and persistent rain as Elena unlocks the storage unit she'd rented after her mother's death. The narrow space holds furniture too precious to discard but too large for her apartment, along with Dozens of labeled boxes containing the remnants of Catherine Parker's methodical life. Elena moves toward the back corner, where a small fireproof safe contains her mother's most important documents. The combination, Elena's birth date, opens it with a satisfying click. Inside lie birth certificates, nursing credentials, and property deeds. But beneath these familiar papers rests a sealed envelope she's never opened, marked in her mother's handwriting. For Eleanor, to be opened only if necessary. With trembling fingers, Elena breaks the seal, unfolding several pages of legal language and a handwritten letter. "My dearest Elena," the letter begins, "if you're reading this, I'm gone, and something has led you to question the choices I made regarding your father. I've always told you he couldn't be part of our lives, which was true, but not the complete truth. Your father was Jonathan Reynolds. We loved each other deeply, but his family considered me unsuitable. When I discovered I was pregnant with you, his parents confronted me with a choice: accept their financial settlement and legal agreement to stay away permanently, or they would destroy my nursing career and ensure Jonathan never found success. Outside their company, I chose your future over my heart. The money they paid has funded your education. The legal document attached forbids me from ever contacting Jonathan or revealing your existence to him. If something has brought you to this letter, perhaps you've even met Jonathan. If so, please don't judge him harshly for not finding us. He never knew to look. Forever yours, Mum." Elena scans the attached legal document, cold, formal language outlining the settlement agreement between Catherine Miller and Reynolds Pharmaceuticals. The final page bears her mother's signature alongside those of Jonathan's parents. Footsteps sound behind her. Jonathan stands in the doorway, raindrops on his coat. "Your neighbor said you might be here. I've been trying to reach you all morning." Eleanor holds out the papers wordlessly. Jonathan takes them, his expression growing pained as he reads. "I had no idea," he whispers. "My own parents. They knew about you from the beginning. They paid my mother to disappear," Eleanor says, her voice steady despite her inner turmoil. "And she took their money. For you," Jonathan corrects gently. "Everything she did was for you." "Was it?" Eleanor challenges, anger breaking through. "Or was it easier to take their money than to fight for what she claimed to believe in? Catherine was alone, pregnant, with her entire career at stake," Jonathan reminds her. "My parents were powerful and ruthless. They threatened." "You too," Elena points out, "but the truth is neither of you fought for each other. Neither of you fought for me." "That's not fair to her memory," Jonathan says quietly, "or to the impossible position she was in." "Fair?" Elena laughs bitterly. "Was it fair that I grew up wondering why my father didn't want me? Was it fair that you missed my entire childhood because your parents decided I wasn't good enough?" "What do you want to do?" Jonathan asks after a moment. "I don't know," she admits. "Part of me wants to walk away from all of this, from you, from Sophie, from the Reynolds name and history. Go back to my life before, and the other part," he asks quietly. Elena touches the reunited pendant at her wrist. "The other part knows it's too late for that. We can't unlearn what we know. We can't unfeel what we've started to feel." She meets his eyes directly. "But we can be honest from now on, completely honest." Jonathan nods, relief visible. "Absolutely. No more secrets. Starting with Sophie," Elena says firmly. "She deserves to know the full story, in age-appropriate terms." "Agreed." Jonathan hesitates. "And what about us? Where do we go from here?" Elena considers the question, looking around at the boxed-up remnants of her mother's life. Catherine had made her choices, flawed, human choices born of impossible circumstances. Now Elena must make her own. "Forward," she says finally, but slowly and with our eyes open. The week following the discovery of Catherine's letter passes in a blur of emotional extremes for Elena. By day, she functions on autopilot at the hospital, her professional training allowing her to compartmentalize her personal turmoil while caring for patients. By night, she pores over her mother's journals and letters, searching for clues she might have missed. At her kitchen table, surrounded by scattered papers and half-drunk cups of tea, Elena creates timelines and charts, trying to make logical sense of emotional history. The photograph Jonathan found of her pregnant mother now sits framed beside one of Catherine holding infant Elena. A knock interrupts her concentration. Darlene enters without waiting for an invitation, taking in the chaos with raised eyebrows. When you don't answer texts for 3 days, this is what happens. Welfare checks. Elena manages a weak smile. I've been... processing. So I see. Darlene clears space on the couch and sits. Want to tell me what new Reynolds family drama has you building a conspiracy board in your kitchen? Words pour out. The gala, Margaret Whitmore's insinuations. The storage unit, her mother's letter, the legal agreement, the confrontation with Jonathan. I don't know who to be angry with, she concludes, pacing her small living room. My mother for accepting their terms, Jonathan's parents for their manipulation, Jonathan himself for not somehow finding us. Maybe anger isn't the point, Darlene suggests quietly. Elena stops pacing. What do you mean? I mean you can be angry at everyone and it won't change what happened. Or you can accept that they were all flawed humans making choices with the information and options they had at the time. My mother lied to me my entire life, Elena points out. She protected you, Darlene counters. From rejection, from legal complications, from the kind of people who would pay to make an inconvenient grandchild disappear from their perfect family narrative. Elena sinks into a chair. I've spent my life building this image of her as practically a saint. Finding out she took what amounts to hush money changes nothing about the mother she was to you, Darlene finishes firmly. The only difference is now you know just how much she sacrificed, including her own integrity when necessary, to give you a good life. And what about Jonathan? Eleanor asks, still struggling. Has he been manipulative, controlling, dismissive of your feelings since you've known him? Elena shakes her head slowly, remembering Jonathan's consistent respect for her boundaries, his patience, his desire to make amends. And what about Sophie? Darlene presses. Is she responsible for any of this? The question brings immediate clarity. Of course not. She's just a child who's already lost one mother and has now found a big sister she adores, Darlene points out. A child who's probably wondering why that big sister disappeared this week. Guilt washes over Eleanor as she realizes she hasn't responded. To Sophie's daily text messages, innocent updates about school projects and questions about when Elena might visit again. Elena looks around at her evidence wall of family secrets. What has all this analysis brought her, except more pain? First to Mamsiwin, Aitunkyunfer. Perhaps some questions don't have satisfying answers. Perhaps some wounds can only heal through acceptance. I think, she says slowly, that I've been so focused on what I lost that I'm risking losing what I've found. As she reaches for her phone, it lights up with an incoming call, Jonathan's number appearing on the screen. For a moment, Elena hesitates, then answers, Elena. Jonathan's voice sounds strained, urgent. I'm sorry to call like this, but it's Sophie. There's been an accident at school. She's asking for you. All hesitation vanishes instantly. Tell me where, Elena says, already reaching for her keys. I'm on my way. Some decisions, she realizes, transcend the complicated emotions of the past. Some connections, once established, create obligations of the heart that no amount of anger or confusion can sever. Whatever unresolved feelings remain about her mother's choices and her father's family, one thing is absolutely clear. Sophie needs her now, and nothing else matters. The pediatric emergency room bursts with activity as Elena rushes through the sliding doors, heart hammering against her ribs. Her professional composure momentarily abandoned, she scans the waiting area anxiously until spotting Jonathan pacing near the reception desk, his usually immaculate appearance disheveled with worry. Where is she? What happened? Eleanor asks, slightly breathless from running from the parking lot. Jonathan's relief at seeing her is palpable. Playground. Accident. She fell from the monkey bars. They're taking x-rays now to check for a broken arm. Have they given her pain medication? Was she conscious the whole time? Eleanor's nurse training kicks in automatically, a shield against the raw emotion of seeing Sophie hurt. Yes to both. She's been asking for you since it happened. Jonathan runs a hand through his hair, a gesture of vulnerability Elena has come to recognize. I didn't know if you'd come after everything. Their conversation is interrupted as a nurse appears. Mr. Reynolds, Sophie's. X-rays are complete. You can see her now. They follow the nurse down a corridor to a curtained exam area where Sophie sits on the edge of a bed, her left arm immobilized in a temporary splint, eyes brightening when she sees them. Elena, you came! Despite her obvious pain, Sophie's face lights up. Dad said you might be too busy, but I told him you'd come because you promised once that you'd always help if I needed you. Elena feels a twinge of guilt, remembering her days of silence. She moves to Sophie's side, carefully sitting beside her on the narrow bed. Of course I came. That's what big sisters do. The word sister, spoken without hesitation for the first time, creates a tangible shift in the small space. Sophie beams despite her discomfort, while Jonathan watches with quiet gratitude. Is it broken? Elena asks gently, examining the splint with professional interest. The doctor said I have a green stick fracture, which means the bone is bent and a little cracked but not completely broken, Sophie explains with pride in her medical knowledge. I get a cast and everything. Very impressive diagnosis, Elena smiles, tucking a strand of hair behind Sophie's ear with natural affection. What color cast are you thinking? Purple. No, blue. No, wait. Can I get white so everyone can sign it with colorful markers? As Sophie deliberates on cast colors, Elena feels the heavy emotions of the past week receding. Here, in this moment of simple care and connection, the complicated history between her parents seems less important than the present relationship forming between herself, Sophie, and Jonathan. Thank you for coming, Jonathan says quietly, when Sophie becomes distracted by the arrival of the orthopedic doctor. It means more than you know. Elena nods, suddenly certain of her decision. The past cannot be rewritten, but the future remains uncharted territory. And in that territory, Sophie's well-being deserves priority over old wounds and painful revelations. As the doctor begins explaining the casting process, Sophie reaches for Elena's hand with her uninjured arm, holding tight as if afraid she might disappear. The gesture, simple, instinctive, trusting, seals something in Elena's heart. Whatever complicated feelings she harbors toward Jonathan and her mother's choices, Sophie's place in her life is now non-negotiable. Some bridges once built cannot be dismantled without causing irreparable damage to both sides. And this particular bridge, the one connecting her to this child who somehow found space in her heart, might be the strongest one of all. 2 weeks after the hospital visit, Elena sits cross-legged on Sophie's bedroom floor, surrounded by colorful paper, ribbons, and cardboard. The cast on Sophie's arm, white as decided, but now covered in rainbow signatures and drawings, doesn't hamper her enthusiasm as they work together on her science project. Do you think the respiratory system looks right? Sophie asks, frowning critically at their cardboard and clay model of human lungs. The bronchial tubes seem too straight. You're right, Eleanor agrees, impressed by Sophie's attention to anatomical detail. Let's curve them more like this. She gently reshapes the clay, guiding Sophie's good hand through the motion. Perfect. Dr. Rivera at my hospital would approve. Really? Sophie beams at the validation. Maybe someday I can be a doctor like my mom was, or a nurse like you and your mom. The casual mention of both maternal figures, Rebecca and Catherine, in the same sentence creates a curious warmth in Elena's chest. Sophie has begun speaking this way recently, naturally incorporating Elena's history into family conversations as if it had always belonged there. Jonathan appears in the doorway, leaning against the frame with coffee mugs in both hands. How's the future science fair winner coming along? Dad, we're making the alveoli now. That's where oxygen goes into the blood, Sophie explains earnestly. Elena says I'm getting the details exactly right. She has an impressive eye for anatomy, Elena confirms, accepting the coffee Jonathan offers. Their fingers brush briefly during the exchange, a small contact that no longer carries the awkwardness of their earlier encounters. Like mother, like daughter, Jonathan says softly, his statement purposefully ambiguous about which mother he means. The three of them have reached a tentative peace in recent weeks. After Sophie's accident, Elena made a conscious decision to set aside her anger about the past and focus on rebuilding trust in the present. The weekly dinners have resumed, along with new traditions like these Saturday crafting sessions with Sophie. "Dad, can I ask you something important?" Sophie suddenly says, setting down her glue stick with unusual seriousness. "Of course, sweetheart." "Well," Sophie begins, glancing between them nervously, "my class is having family day next Friday and we're supposed to bring important family members to talk about their jobs and stuff." Jonathan nods encouragingly. "That sounds fun. I'd be happy to come." "I know you will," Sophie continues, fidgeting with a piece of ribbon. "But I was wondering, could Elena come too? As my sister," her words tumble out faster now, "because Lily Madison is bringing her half-sister and Tyler has his stepmom coming, so it's not weird or anything." The request hangs in the air, its significance far greater than a simple school visit. Sophie is asking for public acknowledgement of their family connection, not just within the safe confines of Jonathan's home, but in her broader social world. Elena feels unexpected emotion tightening her throat. She looks to Jonathan, uncertain how to respond. "It's completely up to Elena," Jonathan says carefully, "but I think it's a wonderful idea." Sophie turns hopeful eyes to Elena. "Will you come, please? You can talk about being a nurse and helping people in emergencies, like how you helped me when I couldn't breathe. My friends would think that's really cool. How could anyone refuse such earnest hope?" Elena thinks of her mother's letter, of Catherine's choice to keep her away from the Reynolds family for protection. But Sophie represents something different, the possibility that connections can heal rather than harm. "I'd be honored to come as your sister," Elena says finally, "though I have to warn you, I might bring my emergency kit for demonstrations. And there's a very realistic rubber wound inside that makes some people queasy." "Awesome." Sophie bounces with excitement, jostling her cast. "That's even better. Tyler brought his dad, who's just a boring accountant last year, but a nurse who fixes emergencies is way cooler." As Sophie launches into elaborate plans for the presentation, Elena catches Jonathan watching them with an expression that blends gratitude and something deeper, a recognition, perhaps, of the family they are slowly becoming, despite the fractured path that brought them together. For the first time since discovering her mother's secret agreement, Elena feels the weight of the past lightening. The history cannot be undone, but perhaps it can be understood. Not as a bitter ending, but as the complicated beginning of something unexpected and valuable. The oak tree in Jonathan's backyard stands tall against the evening sky, its ancient branches supporting the wooden platform of Sophie's treehouse. Elena climbs the ladder carefully, balancing a tray of cookies and hot chocolate, responding to the secret knock Sophie had insisted upon teaching her earlier that afternoon. "Password," Sophie's voice calls from inside, playfully serious. "Stethoscope," Elena answers, smiling at the medical theme Sophie has adopted since their successful Family Day presentation last week. The small door swings open to reveal Sophie's proud face. "Welcome to the official sister meeting place." The treehouse interior glows with battery-powered lanterns, cushions scattered across the wooden floor, and walls decorated with Sophie's drawings, many featuring 3 stick figures of varying heights, labeled Dad, Sophie, and Eleanor. "This is quite the headquarters," Elena comments, settling on a cushion and setting down the treats. "Very cozy. Dad helped build it when I was 6, but he's too big to fit comfortably now," Sophie explains, reaching eagerly for a cookie. "So it can be our special place for sister stuff." "Sister stuff?" Eleanor asks, wrapping her hands around her mug of hot chocolate. "What exactly does that entail?" Sophie's expression turns contemplative, unusual seriousness replacing her typical exuberance. "Well, I've been thinking a lot about families, about how they're not always what you expect." She takes a thoughtful bite of cookie. "Like how I never knew my birth mum. And you never knew your dad, but now we found each other anyway. The simple wisdom in Sophie's observation touches something deep in Elena. Throughout her emotional turmoil over her mother's secret agreement, she hadn't fully considered how meaningful this new connection might be for Sophie, a child who had also experienced significant absence in her family story. That's very true, Elena acknowledges. Families come together in all sorts of unexpected ways. Dad says your mom made a hard choice because she loved you very much, Sophie continues. Just like my mom loved me so much, she kept trying. To have me even though the doctor said it might be dangerous for her. Elena blinks in surprise, unaware that Jonathan had discussed Catherine's situation with Sophie. Your dad told you about my mum's choice? Sophie nods, dunking her cookie in her hot chocolate. Not all the grown-up details, but enough. He said sometimes parents have to make really hard decisions that might seem wrong to other people, but they do it because they're trying to protect the people they love most. The perspective, filtered through a child's understanding but profound nonetheless, offers Elena a new lens through which to view her mother's actions, not as betrayal or weakness, but as a mother's fierce protection. Your dad is pretty. Wise sometimes, Elena admits. Sometimes, Sophie agrees with a hint of mischief, but he still can't figure out how to braid hair properly. That's why I need a big sister. She scoots closer to Elena, bright-eyed with sudden inspiration. Would you teach me how to do a French braid? And maybe someday we could get matching bracelets like the one you have from your mom. The question about matching bracelets carries unintentional weight, touching directly on the symbol that connected Elena to her past and now to her present. But instead of pain, Elena feels a gentle rightness in the idea of extending this connection to include Sophie. I think that sounds perfect, she says softly. And yes, I'd be happy to teach you to French braid, though it might be tricky, until your cast comes off. As they sit together in the growing dusk, sharing cookies and simple conversation, Elena realizes that healing doesn't always come in dramatic moments of forgiveness or revelation. Sometimes it arrives quietly, in treehouse confidences and cookie crumbs, in the innocent wisdom of a child who sees family not as defined by mistakes of the past, but by choices of the present. Outside, through the treehouse window, she spots Jonathan glancing up from the garden patio where he's grilling dinner. He offers a small wave, respecting their privacy while remaining visibly present, much like the way he's approached their developing relationship these past months. Patient, supportive, never pushing for more than Elena is ready to give. Some wounds take time to heal completely, but in this moment of sister secrets and treehouse promises, Elena feels the fractured pieces of her family story beginning to form a new pattern, different from what might have been, but perhaps beautiful in its own right. The afternoon sun streams through the stained glass windows of St. Ower, Michael's Cemetery Chapel, casting jewel-toned light across the small gathering of people. Elena stands before a simple marble headstone, a bouquet of white lilies in her hands. The inscription reads, Catherine Parker, beloved mother, dedicated healer, with the dates marking a life ended too soon. Do you want us to wait in the car? Jonathan asks quietly, standing a respectful distance away with Sophie beside him. Elena shakes her head. No, I think she would want to meet you. Both of you. She gestures, them forward, an invitation that would have seemed impossible just months ago. This visit, bringing Jonathan to Catherine's grave on the anniversary of her death, represents a significant step in Elena's journey toward reconciliation with her complicated family history. After weeks of healing conversations and gradual understanding, she had finally suggested it herself. Sophie approaches with the solemn respect children sometimes show in sacred spaces, placing her own small bunch of daisies beside Elena's lilies. Hello, Elena's mom, she says softly. Thank you for taking such good care of her. She's a really great sister. The simple tribute brings unexpected tears to Elena's eyes. Jonathan stands silent beside her, his own emotions evident in the tightness of his jaw and the gentle hand he places briefly on Elena's shoulder, a touch of support without intrusion. She would have liked you, Sophie, Elena says after a moment. She always said that children see the truth more clearly than adults do. A wise observation, Jonathan murmurs, gazing at the headstone with complicated emotions playing across his features. Catherine always had remarkable insight. Elena watches him, recognizing the genuine respect in his voice. Whatever anger she had initially felt toward him for not somehow finding her has dissolved as she's come to understand the deliberate barriers her mother and the Reynolds family created between them. "I've been thinking about forgiveness," Elena says, her voice steady despite the emotional setting. "Not just forgiving you or my mother or your parents, but also forgiving myself for the anger I've carried." Jonathan looks at her questioningly. "I was so focused on what I'd lost, the father I never knew, the truth my mother never shared, that I almost missed appreciating what I've found." She glances meaningfully at Sophie, who has wandered a short distance away to examine a butterfly on a nearby flower. "Something's broken can be mended into something new if we're brave enough to try. Like your bracelet," Jonathan observes, nodding toward the silver chain at her wrist where the reunited pendant catches the colored light from the windows. Exactly like that. Eleanor touches the pendant, the circle now complete, the fracture, line visible only if you know exactly where to look. The break will always be part of its history, but it doesn't define what it is now. The metaphor hangs between them, applicable to so much more than silver jewelry. After a moment of contemplative silence, Elena continues, "I've decided to start using Parker Reynolds as my last name, not just professionally but legally." The decision had come to her gradually over recent weeks. Not to deny the life my mother built for us, but to acknowledge the full truth of who Jonathan's surprise and evident emotion touch her. "Eleanor, you don't need to." "I know I don't need to," she interrupts gently. "I want to. For me, not for anyone else. Both parts of my history matter." Sophie bounds back to them, oblivious to the emotional weight of the moment. "Can we get ice cream after this? Dad promised we could." "Did he now?" Eleanor raises an eyebrow at Jonathan, who shrugs with a smile. "Cemetery visits should always end with ice cream," he says with mock seriousness. "It's a Reynolds family tradition." "Is it really?" Sophie asks, wide-eyed. "It is now," Elena answers, taking Sophie's hand in hers as they begin walking back toward the cemetery gates, Jonathan falling into step beside them. "The best traditions are the ones we create ourselves." As they leave, Eleanor glances back once at her mother's grave, now adorned with flowers from all three of them. She imagines Catherine watching this unlikely family she never could have envisioned, the daughter she raised alone, the man she once loved, and the half-sister Eleanor never knew she had, and hopes that somehow, somewhere, her mother understands that the circle has finally been completed. 1 year after the emergency room meeting that changed everything, the Reynolds family garden blooms with white roses and silver ribbons. A small gathering of guests mingles on the manicured lawn. Elena's hospital colleagues, Jonathan's closest, friends and Sophie's boundless energy as she darts between them in her pale blue dress, proudly showing off her role as official ceremony coordinator. 5 minutes, everyone," Sophie announces importantly, consulting the glittery wristwatch that was Elena's gift for her 10th birthday. "The ceremony starts in 5 minutes. Elena watches from the sunroom window, her fingers absently touching the silver bracelet at her wrist. The pendant, now whole again, catches the afternoon light as she adjusts the simple white dress she chose for today's occasion. "Nervous?" Darlene asks, appearing beside her with 2 champagne flutes. "Not nervous exactly," Eleanor replies, accepting the offered glass. "More reflective. If someone had told me a year ago that today I'd be here like this, they'd have gotten a classic Elena Parker skeptical eyebrow raise," Darlene finishes with a knowing smile. "And yet, here we are. Here they are indeed. Today marks the official naming ceremony, where Eleanor will legally become Eleanor Parker Reynolds, a choice that honors both sides of her history. Jonathan had suggested a small, meaningful gathering rather than legal paperwork in a sterile office. "She would be proud of you," Darlene says softly, following Eleanor's gaze to the framed photograph of Catherine that holds a place of honor among the ceremony decorations. finding a way to forgive, to heal, to build something new without erasing the past. Before Elena can respond, Sophie bursts into the room, excitement radiating from her every movement. It's time. Dad's waiting, and Judge Martinez says, "We should start while the light is perfect for pictures." As Elena moves toward the garden doors, Sophie suddenly stops her with a small hand on her arm. The girl's expression turns serious, a glimpse of the thoughtful young woman emerging from the energetic child. "Elena, can I tell you something important?" "Of course, sweetheart." Sophie's voice drops to a near whisper. "I asked, Dad wants if having you in our family means I'm loving Mom less. You know what he said?" Elena shakes her head, touched by the child's vulnerability. "He said love isn't like a pie that gets smaller when you share it. It's like falcomycusenses and basmerese." Sophie's forehead wrinkles as she recalls the exact words. Like a garden where new flowers don't crowd out the ones already growing, they just make the whole garden more beautiful. The simple wisdom catches Elena's breath. This, perhaps, is the most unexpected gift of the past year, not just finding her father, but gaining this remarkable sister who bridges their worlds with innocent insight. "Your dad is right," Elena says, kneeling to Sophie's level. "And your mum will always be your mum. I'm just lucky to be an extra person who gets to love you." Sophie beams, the philosophical moment passing as quickly as it arrived. "Come on, everyone's waiting." She tugs Elena's hand, leading her toward the garden where their gathered family, both blood and chosen, awaits to witness the formal recognition of bonds that have grown gradually but unquestionably real over the past year. Through Sophie's eyes, Elena has learned to see beyond the complications of adult choices to the simple truth at the heart of their unusual family story. That love, once given space to grow, finds its own way of healing what was broken. In the dappled shade of the ancient oak tree, Jonathan stands beside a small table draped in white linen. Upon it rests a silver tray holding 3 items: Eleanor's original bracelet, a matching smaller version sized for Sophie, and a silver pocket watch that had belonged to Jonathan's grandfather. Elena takes her place beside him, aware of the symbolism in this carefully planned moment. The gathered guests form a semicircle around them: Darlene and Dr. Rivera from the hospital, Jonathan's closest colleagues, Sophie's favorite teacher, people who have witnessed different parts of their journey to this moment. Judge Martinez, a longtime friend of Jonathan's who agreed to officiate the naming ceremony, addresses the small gathering. "We come together today to celebrate not just a legal name change, but the weaving together of lives and histories that once seemed permanently separated. The Reynolds and Parker families, once divided, now unite in Elena Parker Reynolds." Sophie, standing between Elena and Jonathan, practically vibrates with the importance of her role in the ceremony. When Judge Martinez nods to her, she steps forward with solemn dignity. "In our family," Sophie begins, reciting the words she helped compose, "we believe that broken things can be made whole again, sometimes even stronger, at the places where they were broken." Jonathan takes up the narrative, his voice steady, but emotionally rich. "Like this bracelet that once connected Catherine and me, then was separated for many years, only to become whole again through our daughter, Elena." The word daughter still creates a small flutter in Elena's heart. Not pain anymore, but a recognition of something once missing, now found. She continues the ceremonial words, "Today we create new connections that honor the past while building toward the future." She lifts her bracelet from the tray, the restored pendant gleaming in the sunlight. "This bracelet represents where I came from, the love between my parents that created me, and my mother's courage in raising me." Jonathan then lifts the smaller bracelet, a gift he and Elena designed together for this day. This new bracelet, for Sophie, symbolizes the bridge between generations, a connection that wasn't planned, but has become one of life's most precious gifts. Sophie accepts it with unusual stillness, watching intently as Elena fastens it around her wrist. The pendant on Sophie's bracelet, a small silver star rather than the circle on Elena's, catches the light as she turns her wrist to admire it. "And this," Jonathan concludes, lifting the pocket watch, "represents the passage of time, how moments lost cannot be regained, but new moments await to be treasured. Eleanor Parker Reynolds, I give this to you as a reminder that it's never too late to become the family we were meant to be. As Elena accepts the watch, their three hands naturally meet above the ceremonial table. Jonathan's strong and steady, Sophie's small and eager, Elena's bridging between them. In that simple touch lies a year's worth of painful revelations, careful healing, and the gradual discovery that forgiveness doesn't erase the past, but transforms its meaning. Judge Martinez completes the legal portion of the ceremony, the formal declaration of Elena's new legal name, but it's the personal ritual that holds deeper significance for the three people standing beneath the oak tree. Names can be changed with signatures on documents. Hearts require a different kind of witnessing. 6 months after the naming ceremony, Elena stands before a crowded ballroom at the annual Westside Hospital Benefit Gala. Unlike last year, when she entered this event with trepidation as Jonathan's newly discovered daughter, tonight she takes the podium as the keynote speaker, Dr. Eleanor Parker Reynolds, newly appointed Director of Emergency Medicine Training. Healthcare isn't just about treating symptoms, she tells the assembled donors and medical professionals, her confidence evident in every word. It's about seeing the whole person, their history, their fears, their hopes. Sometimes the most important thing we can offer isn't medication or procedures, but recognition of the human being behind the patient label. From her seat at the Reynolds family table, Sophie watches with undisguised pride, occasionally whispering commentary to Darlene beside her. Jonathan, standing at the back of the room, observes both his daughters with quiet satisfaction. One, building her career with the perfect blend of Catherine's compassion and his own determination, the other blossoming into a thoughtful preteen who speaks increasingly of following the family's medical tradition. When Elena concludes her speech, to enthusiastic applause, Sophie is the first on her feet, her star pendant bracelet catching the light as she claps exuberantly. The sight makes Elena smile as she returns to their table, this sister bond that has deepened beyond anything she could have imagined that first chaotic night in the emergency room. "That was amazing," Sophie exclaims as Elena sits down. Especially the part about how emergency medicine is like putting together puzzle pieces when some might be missing. "Dad said it reminded him of how we found each other. Did he now?" Elena glances toward Jonathan, who approaches their table with 3 dessert plates balanced carefully in his hands. "Guilty as charged," he admits, setting down the plates, "though I think our family puzzle turned out remarkably complete, considering how scattered the pieces were." The easy banter between them speaks to the comfortable rhythm they've established. Family dinners on Sundays, professional collaboration on the hospital's new community outreach program, shared responsibility for Sophie's increasingly busy schedule of activities. The awkwardness of their early relationship has given way to genuine connection, built on mutual respect and the gradual uncovering of traits they share beyond physical resemblance. Later, as the event winds down and guests begin to depart, Elena finds herself on the terrace, where a year ago Margaret Whitmore had delivered the revelation that ultimately led to discovering Catherine's secret agreement. Tonight, the terrace holds no painful memories, only the peaceful glow of city lights below and stars above. Jonathan joins her, resting his elbows on the stone balustrade. "Penny for your thoughts, Dr. Parker Reynolds." "I was thinking." "About circles," Eleanor replies, touching the pendant at her wrist. "How sometimes they break, but can still find their way back to completion." "Philosophical tonight," Jonathan observes with a smile. "Must be the champagne. Must be the company," she counters, then adds more seriously, "I've been thinking about Mother a lot lately. Wondering what she would make of all this, my new position, our family dynamic, Sophie's determination to become a pediatric surgeon like both her moms. Catherine would be immensely proud of you," Jonathan says with certainty, "and I think she would be at peace with how things have evolved. She always wanted what was best for you, even when her choices were impossibly difficult." The simple acknowledgement of her mother's complex legacy touches Elena deeply. In the year since discovering the truth, she has moved from anger to understanding, to a profound appreciation for Catherine's fierce love, flawed human love that did its imperfect best. "Eleanor, Dad," Sophie's voice calls from the doorway. "They're doing the final donation count and I told them we had a surprise announcement." They exchange a knowing look. Sophie's enthusiasm for their planned donation to establish the Catherine Parker Memorial Nursing Scholarship has been building for weeks. As they turn together to rejoin the gala, Elena feels the completed circle of her pendant against her wrist, a tangible reminder that sometimes the most beautiful patterns emerge from pieces once thought permanently separated. 2 years to the day after Jonathan burst into the emergency room with Sophie struggling to breathe, the three of them stand together in Elena's new office at Westside Hospital. The nameplate on the door reads, "Elena Parker Reynolds, MD, Director of Emergency Medicine," the culmination of Elena's accelerated medical training, supported by both her nursing experience and Jonathan's unwavering belief in her potential. "It's perfect," Sophie declares, now 12 and increasingly sophisticated in her assessments. She runs her fingers over the framed photographs on Elena's desk. Catherine in her nursing uniform, Jonathan receiving a humanitarian award, Sophie at her science fair, and the three of them at Elena's medical school graduation. "Our whole family is here. Not quite the whole family," Eleanor corrects gently, opening her desk drawer to remove a small square box. "I have something to show you both." She lifts the lid to reveal a silver pendant, a perfect match to her own, and Sophie's, but designed as a lapel pin rather than bracelet charm. "For you," she tells Jonathan, "to complete our set." Jonathan accepts the gift with visible emotion. "The circle expands," he says, understanding immediately the symbolism that has become their family's private language. "The circle expands," Elena agrees, watching as he pins it to his lapel. "Which is why I've asked you both here today. I have an announcement." Sophie leans forward eagerly, always ready for news or surprises. "Are you getting another award? Or buying a new house? Or, I'm pregnant," Elena interrupts softly, her hand instinctively moving to rest on her still flat stomach. "To due in about 7 months." The statement creates a moment of stunned silence before Sophie erupts in delighted squeals, launching into a rapid-fire series of questions about names and nursery themes. Jonathan remains quiet, watching Elena with a complex mixture of joy and something deeper, understanding perhaps of how this new life represents healing come full circle. "You'll be an amazing mother," he says simply, when Sophie pauses for breath. "You've had excellent examples of parental love in all its complicated forms." The acknowledgement that both Catherine's fiercely protective choices and Jonathan's patient rebuilding of their relationship have shaped Elena's own approach to family feels like the final piece settling into place in a long-forming picture. "And you," Elena tells Sophie, who has moved on to calculating her new role as aunt, "will be the world's most enthusiastic aunt. This baby will know the value of family bonds from day one, something that took the rest of us a bit longer to figure out." As Sophie launches into plans for teaching her future niece or nephew important things that parents forget, Eleanor and Jonathan exchange a smile of shared understanding. The journey that began with a medical emergency and a silver bracelet has unfolded in ways none of them could have predicted, creating not just reconciliation, but genuine joy. Outside the office window, the emergency department continues its constant rhythm, lives intersecting at moments of crisis, paths changing direction in an instant. Elena thinks of the thousands of patients who enter those doors each year, each carrying their own unfinished stories and hidden connections. Perhaps that's the greatest lesson she's learned, that even in the most unlikely circumstances, broken circles can be mended. New patterns can emerge from old wounds, and sometimes the most beautiful journeys begin with the very things we fear most: truth, vulnerability, and the courage to reach across divides we once thought impossible. To bridge. The bracelet at her wrist, symbol of her past, her present, and now her future, catches the light as she places a hand on Sophie's shoulder, the 3 silver pendants momentarily aligned in a constellation of their own making. If Elena and Jonathan's journey touched your heart, let me know by hitting that like button. Every family has its own untold stories. Share this one with someone who might need a reminder that it's never too late for healing and connection. And if you want more emotional stories like this, subscribe to our channel for weekly tales of redemption, resilience, and renewed hope.